Hello everyone, this is Jen and I make useful English Lit study videos on Shakespeare, poetry, fiction, literary ideas and more to help you become a literary expert. So if you're new to my channel and this sounds exactly like what you need, make sure you hit the subscribe button below. So in today's video, we are carrying on with our series on looking at Shakespeare through art, with a focus on paintings about or inspired by the play Romeo and Juliet. I've already done two on art related to Macbeth and Othello, so make sure you check them out if you are interested in this topic. So since Romeo and Juliet is such a classic and widely known love story, there's really no shortage of artwork about these star-crossed lovers, their intense romance and their tragic death. All deeply emotional topics that make for great, affecting art. But in today's video, I want us to look at different ways that artists of various styles have approached the play. Some of them conventionally romantic, but others not necessarily so, which arguably makes for more interesting analysis. We'll start with three pre-Raphaelite style paintings portraying the couple's iconic kiss, and then move on to a famous 20th century symbolist painting, two portrayals of the tomb scene, and conclude with two fascinating modern reimaginations of the play. So with that, let's dive straight into it. Now, anyone who has read or watched Romeo and Juliet would recall the balcony scene in Act 2, Scene 2, where the new lovebirds profess their deep, amorous feelings for each other after having met and kissed at the Capulets' masquerade ball. It's also a moment that has captured many an artistic imagination, the most famous of which points to several Pre-Raphaelite and Victorian paintings by Ford Madox Brown, Alfred Elmore, and Frank Bernard Dixie. Pre-Raphaelite art is characterized by close attention to detail, vibrant and saturated hues, as well as idealized female beauty, which are traits that lend this style well to a subject matter like love at first sight between two beautiful people. In all these three paintings, there's a sharp contrast between Romeo's red robes and Juliet's cream-colored dress, with the man leaning into the woman, suggesting him to be the more ardent pursuer in this relationship. There's a strong sense of assertive, energetic charge in the way these artists portray Romeo's body language, as he leans forward and into Juliet's neck and mouth, which also conveys the notion that he's taking something away from her even while giving himself into this mutual intimacy. Classic color symbolism would have us associating the red with passion and the white with purity. And indeed, the play does seem to capture the couple's early encounters as moments where passion collides with purity as an initiation into adulthood for Juliet, who will of course soon lose her innocence as she experiences Tybalt's murder, Romeo's exile and death, and eventually her own suicide. Of course, regardless of Romeo and Juliet, the act of kissing someone on the mouth is one of the most common expressions of romantic intimacy, which also makes it a popular subject in art. In fact, those Pre-Raphaelite representations of Romeo and Juliet's fateful kiss reminded me of two modern paintings depicting a lover's kiss, which are Gustav Klimt's The Kiss, 1907, and Rene Magritte, The Lovers 2, 1928. Klimt's gold-gilded symbolist painting is probably closer in spirit to those previous paintings that we've seen, as it conveys a deep sense of romance and connection with the man and woman's bodies fused in an embrace amongst the golden meadows. Despite the surrealist touch, the overall sense still seems to be the sort of ardent infatuation which echoes Romeo and Juliet's love for one another. On the other hand, Magritte's take on the kiss seems much more eerie than romantic, with the lovers' faces entirely smothered in white cloth, evoking the shuddering image of two halved mummies. Besides, it begs the question as to whether Magritte's kiss is a real one, because the lovers' mouths don't technically touch. In Magritte's impression, we find unrealized longing and morbid desire, which in fact are also key ideas in the play, as the couple die in each other's arms before they ever get to properly consummate their love. While Klimt is now most well known for his symbolist art, which he had created in the latter half of his career, he started off with a much more traditional academic style. Well, one such example of his early academic paintings is actually about Romeo and Juliet, namely a fresco on the play's death scene he was commissioned to make for the Vienna Burgtheater. While executed with great technical skill, is an oddly rigid juxtaposition of a group of stiff audience looking on a stilted stage scene with the actor playing Romeo leaning against a sleeping Juliet, whom he at this point assumes is dead. If anything, is a bizarrely cold composition which conveys the opposite of the play's intensity, passion, and romance. Not, in my opinion, the best testament to Klimt's tremendous talents, and perhaps also why he's really not known for this specific work. Instead, earlier artists have depicted the tomb scene in much more intriguing ways. For example, going back to the 18th century, the British painter and scientist Benjamin Wilson had reimagined the scene altogether by having his Romeo and Juliet bid farewell to each other while Juliet prepares to recline in the tomb, which doesn't, of course, happen in Shakespeare's play. And this bungled communication between the lovers is, of course, the root cause of their tragic, deadly misunderstanding. So what Wilson has done then is an act of artistic revisionism of a literary work, which perhaps suggests that Shakespeare had affected Wilson deeply enough to have wanted to overwrite, or overpaint the bard's quill with his own brushstroke. So if you've watched my Othello art video, you know that John Everett Millais, one of the founding members of the Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood, had often used Shakespearean characters and scenes as his subject, including Othello and Desdemona, Ophelia's drowning scene from Hamlet, and indeed the final act of Romeo and Juliet, when Romeo sees Juliet's still body in the tomb before taking his own life. In Millais' painting of the scene, which you may notice looks very un-Pre-Raphaelite in style, as it was painted later in his career, by which point he had already shifted away from Pre-Raphaelite style and towards embracing a looser, more naturalistic style using broader, rougher brushstrokes. There's a curious diffusion that you can see in the composition's balance here. At first glance, we probably can't tell where Romeo and Juliet are in the canvas because there's so many other figures clustered around them, hugging and consoling each other as they assume, like Romeo, that she has died. There's a hint of irony, though, in Millais' representation, because Romeo looks the least upset amongst everyone in the canvas, with his hands holding up the vial and his eyes looking towards an old man's squinting face instead of at Juliet's body. The vivid green and reds in the canvas also look strangely festive and joyous for a moment like this, but perhaps that's just a remnant of Millais' early Pre-Raphaelite days when using such strong hues would have been a staple. So we can see that he's not really completely switched gears in terms of his artistic style when he's painting the scene. Now, if you've seen my other art videos, you know that I like to throw in a wild card at the end of these lit crossover art videos, just to show how there's always a possibility to see the same thing in radically different ways. So for this video, I've chosen the 20th century British artist Walter Sickert's Romeo and Juliet near Reculver, Kent, and also the contemporary Euclidean artist Miguel Betancourt's very unlikely but intriguing impression of the play. In fact, what Sickert and Betancourt's paintings of Romeo and Juliet share is just how un-Romeo and Juliet in spirit they seem. The focus of Sickert's canvas, as you'll see, is not really so much the lovers or even the people, but the landscape of Reculver, which is an ancient village town by the Kentish coast. There's a mix of ruggedness and tranquility in Sickert's juxtaposition of the steep cliff, dappled beach, and calm sea, which could be interpreted as a mirror of Romeo and Juliet's psyche, being marked by such polarizing feelings of turbulent despair when they're apart, but also quiet bliss when they spend the last night together before Romeo's exile to Mantua. There are two human figures on the edge of the promontory, but their physical distance and the fuzzy coarseness of Sickert's brushstrokes render them very much secondary in focus. By deploying such a muted palette and zoomed-out perspective, though, Sickert seems to be subtly mocking the myopic obsession of Shakespeare's lovers. They may see each other as the center of their universe, but the world is objectively much bigger, and frankly, it is indifferent to anyone's romantic fate, tragic or otherwise. So another perhaps more rogue interpretation of the play is Betancourt's painting, which features a disfigured Siamese twin gargoyle-looking thing seated in front of the proscenium arc of a theatre stage. The only romantic quality about it, if there's any at all, is perhaps in the artist's choice of a pink and rose colour scheme. But otherwise, this painting just gives me the shivers. Also, what's with the hanging white man-like structure in the top right corner? What's intriguing about Betancourt's representation, though, is its genderlessness. Contrary to all the other paintings we've seen so far, Romeo and Juliet aren't distinguished by any gender markers here, as the two bold faces look virtually identical. Yet they are more intimately bound than all the other artistic pairings of Romeo and Juliet, indeed being literally two faces appended to one single body. What Betancourt's painting suggests then is that in attempting to achieve extreme intimacy, romantic union, and even spiritual fusion, two people could lose their individuality and identity in the process, the codependency of which will lead to undesirable ends, not unlike how Romeo and Juliet turned out. And there you have it, guys. I hope you found this video inspiring and thought-provoking for your understanding of the play, and that you are now encouraged to look at the characters and themes from a new and refreshing angle. I actually had lots of fun researching for and making this video. The process of finding art and engaging with the intersections between art and lit was super enlightening for me as well, even after having taught and read this play for so many times. If you're studying Romeo and Juliet at school, make sure you check out my other videos on the play for top grade ideas. I also have detailed essay walkthroughs, and those should be really useful for you if any one of you will be doing exams on this play. So for your next video, I encourage you to watch my other art crossover lit analysis videos on Macbeth, Othello, etc., which will help you sharpen your interdisciplinary thinking. And I'll actually be making another one on Hamlet as well. Hit the thumbs up button below if you found this video useful and inspiring in any way, so that YouTube will know to share this with other passionate lit learners like yourself all around the world. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and hit that bell notification so that you don't miss out on my future weekly videos. You can also consider joining my membership program by hitting that join button below if you want exclusive video requests and essay review perks. As always, I will see you in the next one. Bye!